I'm Jessica Martinez, 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago my parents did something I never thought possible. They took my late grandfather's vintage guitar, the one he'd promised me since I was 12, sold it for $87,000, and handed every penny to my younger brother Marcus for a brand new Porsche. They assumed Grandpa Joe was too medicated in hospice to remember. They assumed I was too scared to tell him the truth. They were catastrophically wrong. When I finally showed Grandpa what they'd done, he didn't rage or weep. He simply picked up his phone, made one call, and spoke 9 words that would obliterate everything my parents had built their lives on. But before I reveal those 9 words and what unfolded at my mother's surprise retirement party, go ahead and subscribe if stories about family justice resonate with you. Drop a comment telling me what you'd do in my situation. Now let me take you back 3 weeks, to the day Grandpa Joe collapsed. The call came during my Thursday evening guitar lesson with Emma, my youngest student. Dad's voice was clipped, businesslike. Joe's had a stroke. He's stable, but they're transferring him to Evergreen Hospice in Portland. Family meeting in 90 minutes. I canceled my remaining lessons and drove straight there. When I arrived at the hospital, my parents and Marcus were already clustered near the vending machines. Dad, Robert Martinez, stood with his arms rigid across his chest. Mom, Patricia, gripped her Prada handbag. Marcus, 25 and forever the golden child, barely glanced up from his phone. "You made it," Dad said flatly. "We're dividing up responsibilities. Marcus has the firm to think about, your mother and I have the merger closing next week, so Jessica, you'll handle daily visits. Your teaching schedule is flexible enough. I teach 42 students every week. I run weekend workshops. My time matters too." But I said what I always said. Of course. I want to be there for him anyway. Excellent. Dad was already turning toward the elevator. "Text us if his condition changes." As they walked away, I heard Mom's voice drift back, meant only for Marcus. "Well, at least she's good for something practical." I visited Grandpa every single day. His room smelled like cedar and old vinyl records because he demanded they bring his favorites from home. If I'm dying, he told me that first afternoon, I'm doing it surrounded by the things that made life worth living. He was 79, stubborn as granite, with congestive heart failure that the doctors said would take him within weeks. We'd sit for hours talking about music, his years touring with jazz bands across the South, my students who couldn't hold a pick steady but had rhythm in their souls. One evening he reached for my hand, his grip weaker than I remembered but his eyes still fierce. "Jessica, I need you to hear something important. The Gibson." He paused, letting the weight settle. My 1959 Les Paul. The one Dad bought me when I made first share. I knew it intimately. I'd learned my first chords on those strings when I was 7. That guitar had been the heartbeat of every family gathering, the one place I felt truly valued. "It's yours," he said firmly. "I told Robert and Patricia last month at Sunday dinner, in front of everyone. That guitar belongs to you when I'm gone." I remembered that conversation. Dad's jaw clenching. Mom shooting Marcus a loaded glance. My brother muttering something about sentimental garbage. "Grandpa, you don't need to do this." "I want to." He squeezed harder. "You're the only one who understands what it represents. Music isn't about money. It's about soul. Promise me you'll honor that." "I promise, Grandpa." He smiled then, a knowing smile that held secrets I couldn't see yet. "Some things are worth more than $, kiddo. And some people need to learn that lesson the hard way." I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. 12 days later, everything shattered. Grandpa had asked me to bring some photographs from his house in Beaverton, pictures from his touring days. He wanted to see one last time. I still had a key, so I drove over after my Saturday morning lessons. The house felt hollow when I stepped inside. I walked through the entry, past the kitchen, into the den where the Gibson had lived in its case for 40 years. The corner was empty. I stopped breathing. Where the guitar case should have been, there was nothing but a dust outline on the shelf. A ghost of something precious, violently erased. My hands shook as I dialed Mom. Where's Grandpa's guitar? Silence. Then her voice, ice cold. Your father handled it. Adult business, Jessica. Don't worry yourself. Handled it how? Where is it? I said don't worry about it. Click. I stood in the empty den staring at the dust outline while rain hammered the windows. Then I got in my car and drove to my parents' house in Lake Oswego. Dad answered holding bourbon, looking irritated. The guitar, I said. What did you do with it? Sold it. Got $87,000. Excellent return on investment. You sold it? The room tilted. Grandpa promised it to me. Grandpa's dying, Jessica. He took a slow sip. He doesn't need a guitar. And frankly, neither do you. Behind him, keys jingled. Marcus appeared grinning like he'd won the lottery. Check out what just got delivered. You bought him a car? My voice felt distant, unreal. With Grandpa's guitar? Dad shrugged. Porsche Cayenne. Marcus needs to project success at the firm. Image matters in corporate law. That guitar was mine. And what would you do with it? Mom appeared, arms crossed. You teach children's guitar classes, Jessica. You're not performing at Carnegie Hall. Marcus needed that money for his career. For his future. Her future, I repeated, tasting ash. Marcus jingled his keys. Don't be bitter, Jess. Maybe if you'd chosen a real career instead of babysitting kids with ukuleles, you could afford nice things too. I looked at the three of them, at the life they'd constructed where I was always the footnote, always the afterthought. Does Grandpa know? Silence crashed down. Does Grandpa know you sold his guitar? Mom's face turned to stone. He's in hospice, Jessica. He's on morphine half the day. He doesn't need information that would upset him in his final weeks. You mean you don't want him to know? I mean, Mom stepped closer, her voice dropping to something cruel. If you tell him and the shock causes another stroke and he dies, that blood is on your hands. Do you want to be responsible for killing your grandfather? The accusation hung between us like smoke. I should have backed down. The old Jessica would have. But something had cracked open inside me. Something that refused to be silent anymore. Grandpa deserves to know what you did to his property, I said quietly. And I won't lie to protect you. I turned and left before they could respond. I didn't sleep. My apartment felt suffocating, a small one-bedroom my parents constantly mocked as proof I'd failed at life. I sat on my second-hand couch staring at a framed photo on my bookshelf. Grandpa Joe at age 55, guitar in hand, mid-solo at the Monterey Jazz Festival. That same guitar they'd sold like it was nothing. Mom's words circled like vultures. If he dies, that's on you. Was she right? Would telling him cause more harm than good in his final days? But then I remembered what Grandpa taught me when I was 14 and terrified to audition for youth orchestra. The truth might sting, kiddo, he'd said, but lies always cut deeper. They just take longer to bleed out. I thought about 29 years of swallowing my voice to keep peace. 29 years of accepting less because fighting felt impossible. 29 years of shrinking so my family could feel larger. Where had it gotten me? Here. Alone. Watching them erase Grandpa's wishes like his words were meaningless. If I stayed silent, I wasn't protecting anyone. I was becoming part of the lie. By 4 in the morning I'd decided. Grandpa deserved the truth. He deserved to know his son had stolen from him and assumed he was too weak to matter. And maybe I deserved to stop apologizing for existing. Grandpa was awake when I arrived that morning, watching hummingbirds outside his window. You look like you haven't slept, sweetheart. I haven't. I pulled a chair close and took his hand. Grandpa, I need to tell you something and it's going to hurt. His eyes, still sharp despite the medication, studied my face. Then tell me. So I did. The empty corner in his den. The $87,000. The Porsche gleaming in Marcus's driveway. Dad's casual dismissal. Mom's threat. I told him everything, bracing for devastation, for tears, for the kind of shock that might break what remained of his fragile heart. Instead, Grandpa Joe released a long, measured breath. Not a gasp. Not a sob. A sigh. The sigh of someone who'd been expecting this. Grandpa? He turned to look at me, and his expression wasn't shattered. It was calm, almost resigned. I knew this was possible, kiddo. You knew? I know my son. His voice was steady. I've watched him become this person for 35 years. I hoped he'd prove me wrong, but I prepared for the possibility he wouldn't. Prepared how? He didn't answer directly. Hand me my phone. I passed it over, confused. He scrolled through contacts with surprising precision, found a name, pressed call, put it on speaker. 2 rings. Then a woman's voice, warm and professional. Joe, how are you feeling today? I'm dying, Linda. But my mind's clear and it's time. I understand. When? Sunday. Patricia's retirement party. At my house. I'll have everything ready. Thank you, old friend. He ended the call and looked at me with that knowing smile. Grandpa, I whispered. Who's Linda? Linda Chen. She set the phone down gently. She's been my attorney for 27 years. She was your grandmother's college roommate. You have an attorney? I have a lot of things Robert doesn't know about, Jessica. His eyes held something I'd never seen before. Your father assumes he knows everything about my estate. He's always assumed that. It's his fatal flaw. I felt like I was standing at a cliff's edge. What happened Sunday at Mom's party? Accountability, he said simply. Long overdue, but accountability nonetheless. I don't understand. You will. He leaned back, suddenly exhausted. I just need you to trust me and do one thing. Come to the party. Dress like you matter. And bring patience. The kind I taught you when you were learning Hendrix and wanted to smash the guitar. I almost laughed. That bad? Worse. His expression softened. But necessary. Your father needs to learn actions have consequences. And I've spent 4 years making sure when that lesson came, it would be unforgettable. For years, Grandpa, what did you do? I protected you, kiddo. The way I should have years ago. I'm just sorry it took me this long. 2 days later I found myself in a law office in downtown Portland. Linda Chen was early 60s, sharp-eyed, with silver-streaked hair and movements that radiated precision. Her office smelled like jasmine tea and old books. Jessica Martinez. She extended her hand. Your grandfather talks about you constantly. It's wonderful to finally meet you. Ms. Chen, I started. Linda, please. She gestured to a chair. Sit. Joe asked me to explain some things before Sunday. Tell me, Jessica, do you know who owns the house your parents live in? They do, I said. Grandpa gave it to them when Grandma died. Linda's expression didn't shift. Is that what they told you? That's what everyone believes. Everyone is wrong. She pulled a folder from her desk and slid it toward me. Your grandfather allowed Robert and Patricia to live there rent-free, but he never transferred ownership. Not legally. Not ever. I stared at the document. The deed. Joseph Martinez, clear as day. No transfer. No amendment. They've been living there for 8 years thinking it was theirs. Precisely. But why would Grandpa let them believe that? Because he was watching, Jessica. Linda leaned forward. Watching to see if Robert would prove his suspicions wrong. Unfortunately, he proved them right. That evening I searched through old boxes in my closet until I found it. A sealed envelope Grandpa had given me years ago with instructions. For Jessica, when you need clarity. Inside was a photocopy of a legal document, partially obscured, but I could see Grandpa's signature dated 4 years ago. Clipped to it was a note in his handwriting. The house was only borrowed, kiddo. Some borrowers don't deserve the privilege. I read it 3 times, and then I understood. Sunday's party was at Grandpa's house, the house my parents treated as their own, where they hosted their corporate friends and charity galas, where they'd taken the guitar from the den like it belonged to them. But it didn't. It never had. My father had built his entire identity on a foundation of sand. I thought about all the lectures on fiscal responsibility and real assets, all the mockery of my small apartment while he stood in a home he didn't own. The irony was almost poetic. The night before the party, Grandpa called. His voice was barely above a whisper, each word costing him effort. But his mind was diamond sharp. Jessica, are you ready for tomorrow? I think so. Pause. Grandpa, are you absolutely sure? It's Mom's retirement party. In front of everyone. That's exactly why it needs to be tomorrow. He took a slow, painful breath. Your father sold my guitar at family dinner last month. Announced it like it was his decision. He didn't ask. He didn't think about you. He assumed I was too sick and you were too quiet to fight back. I remember. Then you understand why witnesses matter. His voice softened. I'm not doing this for revenge, kiddo. Revenge is hollow. I'm doing this because it's just, and because you deserve protection after I'm gone. Tears burned. Grandpa, don't. I should have acted sooner. I watched how they treated you for years and kept hoping Robert would change. That was my failure. It's not your fault. Maybe not entirely, but I can make it right now. Pause. I don't have much time, Jessica. Days, maybe a week. I can feel it. So I need to know, do you trust me? Always. Then come tomorrow. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. And remember, you're not the villain here. You never were. Sunday arrived cold and crystalline. Grandpa's house looked almost festive. Someone had hung a congratulations banner across the front porch. Cars packed the driveway and lined the street. I parked far down the block and sat gathering myself. I'd chosen a charcoal dress, simple but elegant, with the silver bracelet Grandpa gave me for my 21st birthday. Armor. Inside, the house hummed with maybe 40 guests. Aunts and uncles I saw once a year, Dad's business partners, Mom's book club friends. I spotted Mr. Chun from Dad's firm near the fireplace. His son David stood beside him with Marcus hovering nearby. The den caught my eye immediately. The corner where the Gibson had lived was empty except for a decorative plant someone had placed there, a pathetic attempt to fill the void. Mom stood near the buffet table in an emerald cocktail dress, receiving congratulations like royalty. Dad worked the room with practiced charm. And in the far corner, almost invisible, sat Linda Chen. Her leather briefcase rested beside her chair. She caught my eye and nodded once. I nodded back. My Aunt Rosa, Grandpa's younger sister, appeared beside me. Mija, how's Joe really doing? Tired, I said honestly. But still himself. He always was the fighter. Rosa's eyes drifted to the empty corner. I noticed the guitars missing. Robert said Joe wanted to liquidate assets. I started to respond, but Dad's voice cut through the conversations. Everyone, your attention please. Dad stood center room, champagne flute raised. Today we celebrate Patricia's incredible 30-year career in architecture. Applause rippled through the crowd. Mom beamed. And I want to share some family news. My stomach dropped. Many of you know our son Marcus has been advancing rapidly at Chan and Associates. Gesturing toward Marcus, who smiled confidently. To support his trajectory, we made a strategic decision. He led everyone outside where a midnight blue Porsche sat in the driveway, topped with an enormous bow. A gift, Dad announced proudly, made possible through Grandpa Joe's generosity. He liquidated a family asset to invest in his grandson's future. Marcus actually hooped, hugged Dad, posed beside the car for photos while guests applauded. I stood frozen on the porch. He was doing it again. Rewriting history. Making himself the hero while erasing Grandpa entirely. A woman I didn't recognize whispered to her husband, "Wasn't that guitar supposed to go to the daughter? The music teacher?" The husband shrugged. "Plans change, I guess." Aunt Rosa touched my arm, her face pale. "Jessica, did Joe really approve this?" Before I could answer, Marcus spotted me and called out, voice dripping false sweetness. "Jess, come take a picture. Don't look so miserable. I'm sure Grandpa will leave you something too. Maybe his record collection." Scattered laughter. My hands trembled. Vision blurred. Then behind me, a briefcase clicked open. People filed back inside, but Aunt Rosa blocked Dad's path. "Roberto." Her voice was steady despite shaking hands. "I need to ask you something." Dad's smile didn't waver. "Can it wait, Rosa? We're celebrating." "Did you ask Joe before selling that guitar?" The question dropped like a stone. Nearby conversations stuttered. "Father's in hospice," Dad said smoothly. "He's not capable of making these decisions. We acted in his best interests. I spoke with him this morning." Rosa's voice strengthened. "He's completely lucid, Roberto. And he told me you never asked permission. You never even informed him." More people were listening now. I saw Mr. Chen frown. Saw David shift uncomfortably. Mom pushed forward, face flushed. "Rosa, this is my retirement party. Let's not create drama." "Drama?" Rosa's laugh was sharp. "Patricia, your husband sold Joe's most treasured possession without his knowledge and bought a car with it. If anyone's creating drama, it's not me." The room had gone quiet. 40 pairs of eyes bounced between my aunt and my parents. "This is a private family matter," Dad said tightly. "It doesn't need public discussion." "Actually," a new voice said from the corner, "I believe public is exactly where this belongs." Linda Chen stood, briefcase open, folder in hand. She walked toward the room's center with the calm authority of someone who'd done this countless times. "Good afternoon. My name is Linda Chen. I'm Joseph Martinez's attorney." Dad's face drained of color. The silence was crushing. Linda positioned herself near the empty corner where the guitar had been. A deliberate choice. "I apologize for interrupting the celebration, but Joseph Martinez asked me to address urgent matters regarding his estate. Given circumstances, he felt it essential that family and close friends hear this directly." My father found his voice. "Since when does my father have a private attorney?" "Since 27 years ago, Robert." Linda's tone was polite but cutting. "I also represented your mother. You'd know this if you'd bothered to ask." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, this is insane." Mom stepped forward. "Joe's dying. He's not thinking clearly. Whatever papers you have, Mrs. Martinez." Linda raised a hand. "I visited Joe this morning. His hospice nurse can confirm he's fully competent. He dictated precise instructions for today." She opened the folder and removed a document. "Now, I understand there's confusion about property ownership. Let me clarify." She held up the paper. "This is the deed to the house we're currently in." I watched Dad's face go ashen. "Notice the name. Joseph Martinez. Not Robert Martinez. Not Patricia Martinez." Linda paused. "This property has never been transferred. Never gifted. Your parents have lived here rent-free for 8 years through Joe's generosity. Nothing more." The room erupted. Dad grabbed a chair to steady himself. Marcus stared at his father, confusion warring with panic. Linda wasn't finished. That's just the beginning. Dad's voice cracked. This is impossible. Dad promised us this house. He promised you could live here. Linda set the deed on the table where everyone could see. He never promised ownership. There's a legal difference, Mr. Martinez. I watched realization spread like wildfire. Mr. Chun stepped back from Dad. Neighbors exchanged knowing looks. For 8 years, Linda continued, you've enjoyed this property without paying rent, utilities, or taxes, all covered by Joe's accounts. You've treated it as yours. Made renovations without permission. She glanced at the modern chandelier Mom installed last year. Legally, you're tenants at will. The property owner can terminate that arrangement anytime. You can't be serious, Mom's voice went shrill. We've lived here nearly a decade. We've invested in this house. Invested without authorization. Linda's expression didn't change. Any modifications made without written consent belong to the property owner. Marcus grabbed David's arm. This is crazy. Dad, tell her this is some kind of mistake. Dad couldn't speak. He stared at the deed like it was a death sentence. I should also mention, Linda added almost casually, that Oregon law takes property fraud seriously. Misrepresenting someone else's property as your own, especially in business contexts, carries significant consequences. I saw Mr. Chen's expression shift from confusion to cold calculation. He looked at Dad differently now. Not as a partner but as a risk. The empire Dad built on borrowed prestige was collapsing. Now, Linda said, pulling another document, we address the trust. What trust? Dad whispered. 4 years ago, Joseph Martinez established a separate trust independent of the will your family reviewed. This trust was created specifically to protect valuable assets in case of, she paused delicately, financial misconduct. Financial misconduct? Mom sputtered. We're his family. Family members can still commit misconduct, Mrs. Martinez, as recent events prove. Linda withdrew a thick document. Per this trust's terms, the following assets are irrevocably assigned to one beneficiary. This property. Joe's financial accounts. And all items of sentimental value, including the 1959 Gibson Les Paul recently sold without authorization. She looked up, gaze settling on me. The sole beneficiary is Jessica Marie Martinez. Silence. Then Megan's shriek. What? This is fraud, Dad shouted. She manipulated him. That little, he pointed at me, rage twisting his face. Robert. Linda's voice turned to ice. Choose your next words carefully. Everything said here has been witnessed by 40 people. Aunt Rosa moved beside me. Her hand found mine. Joe knew exactly what he was doing, Linda continued. He spent 4 years watching, waiting, hoping Robert would prove him wrong. Instead, he sold Joe's most treasured possession for a car for the son who visits twice a year. Pause. Actions have consequences, Mr. Martinez. This is yours. Mom was crying. Marcus looked sick. And I couldn't move, couldn't process what I was hearing. Linda let the chaos settle before continuing. Regarding the guitar sale. She pulled another document. Since the Gibson was trust property and Jessica is the designated beneficiary, the sale without the trustee's consent, that's Joe, constitutes unauthorized disposal of trust assets. What does that mean? Marcus's voice was tiny. It means the $87,000 must be returned to the trust within 45 days. Linda's gaze swept my parents and brother. Failure to comply results in civil litigation for misappropriation. Given the paper trail, the outcome would not favor your family. Dad laughed, hollow and desperate. We don't have $87,000 lying around. It went to the car. Then I suggest liquidating that asset. Linda nodded toward the window where the Porsche sat, bow and all. The dealer might accept a return, though you'll take a loss. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. My car. You're taking my car? I'm not taking anything, Mr. Martinez. I'm explaining legal consequences of your family's choices. I watched Marcus look to David for support, but David had already stepped away, expression carefully blank. His father whispered something in his ear. Neither looked sympathetic. Additionally, Linda added, Joe requests your living arrangement be formally restructured. You may remain temporarily, but a proper lease is required. A lease? Mom barely whispered. In the house we've lived in 8 years. In the house, Linda corrected gently, you never owned. The room had gone silent. Every eye on me. Dad turned slowly, face twisted with betrayal. You did this. You poisoned him against us. I stood my ground. No, Dad. I didn't do anything. My voice was steadier than expected. Grandpa made these decisions 4 years ago, long before I knew. Liar. Mom's voice shook with venom. You've always been jealous of Marcus, of our success. This is your revenge. Revenge? I felt something cold crystallize inside. I didn't sell Grandpa's guitar without asking. I didn't spend the money on myself. I didn't lie about it to everyone. I stepped forward. I'm not the one who said at least she's good for something when I agreed to visit Grandpa daily. I'm not who hung up when I asked questions. And I'm not who threatened me, saying I'd kill Grandpa if I told the truth. Gasps spread through the room. Rosa's grip tightened. I spent 29 years invisible in this family. My voice didn't waver. I accepted it because I thought love meant making myself small. I looked at Dad, at Mom, at Marcus. But Grandpa taught me different. He taught me loving yourself means standing for what's right, even when it costs everything. I took a breath. So here's what I need you to understand. I'm not apologizing anymore. I'm not staying silent anymore. And I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. The room was still. The crowd dispersed slowly, awkwardly, with whispered goodbyes and avoided eye contact. Mr. Chan and David left without speaking. Linda pulled me aside. Jessica, we need to discuss next steps. I nodded, still surreal. Legally, you have options. You could demand immediate eviction. Given circumstances, Joe would support whatever you decide. I looked across the room at my parents. Dad had collapsed into a chair. Mom stood by the window, mascara streaked. Marcus had vanished, probably outside with his doomed Porsche. Part of me wanted to twist the knife. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. I don't want to evict them immediately, I said slowly. Here's what I want. The $87,000 returned within 90 days, not 45. Give them time to sell the car and figure it out. They can stay with a formal lease at minimal rent. After Grandpa, I swallowed hard, after he passes, they have 1 year to find somewhere else. That's generous given everything. Maybe, I met her eyes, but I'm not doing this to punish them. I'm doing it because it's right. And I refuse to become what they are. Linda studied me, then nodded with respect. Joe said you'd respond this way. He's very proud of you, Jessica. I know, my voice cracked, I know he is. The agreement was drafted there at the dining table, witnessed by Rosa and 2 remaining guests. Dad signed without looking at me. Mom's hand shook so badly she could barely write. Neither spoke. By the time the last signature was done, the house had emptied. The retirement cake sat untouched. The banner drooped sadly. Rosa hugged me tight before leaving. You did right, Mija. Joe would be so proud. He is proud, I said softly. I talked to him this morning. As if summoned, my phone buzzed. Video call from Grandpa's hospice. I answered, walking to the empty corner where the guitar used to be. His face appeared, pale but peaceful. The nurse smiled in the background. My brave kiddo. Grandpa's voice was weak but warm. How do you feel? Terrified, I admitted. And relieved. And sad all at once. That's courage, kiddo. It never feels comfortable. I didn't evict them. I gave them time. I know. Linda texted me. His eyes glistened. You're better than they deserve, Jessica. But that's why I chose you. I pressed my hand to the screen, wishing I could hold his instead. Thank you, Grandpa. For everything. Don't thank me. He smiled, tinged with sorrow. Just live well. Play music. Be happy. That's how you thank me. I will. I know you will, kiddo. He closed his eyes. I know. Grandpa Joe passed 2 days later, peacefully, with my hand in his. The funeral was small, at the chapel he'd attended 40 years. Simple, per his wishes. No elaborate flowers. Just music and people who loved him. I played acoustic during the service, not the Gibson that was gone, but a borrowed Martin from the chapel. I played Miles Davis's Blue and Green, the first jazz piece Grandpa taught me. The chapel was maybe 60 people. Rosa sat front row, tissues clutched tight. Grandpa's musician friends filled several pews, gray-haired men and women who remembered when Joe Martinez had been a legend in West Coast jazz. My parents sat in back. They didn't approach me before, during, or after. Mom wore dark sunglasses. Dad stared ahead like a man at his own execution. Marcus didn't come. Too upset, Mom told someone who asked. I gave the eulogy. I spoke about Grandpa's music, his wisdom, his quiet strength. I talked about how he taught me love isn't grand gestures, it's showing up daily and seeing someone for who they are. I didn't mention the drama. The funeral wasn't the place. 7 months later I moved into Grandpa's house. It felt strange initially, walking rooms filled with his presence, sleeping in the guest room I'd known since childhood. But slowly it became home. I used part of the returned money to buy a new guitar. Not a vintage Gibson, those cost 6 figures, but a gorgeous Taylor that filled the corner where Grandpa's had lived. Different, but meaningful. A new beginning. I started teaching private lessons weekends. My first student was Rose's granddaughter, Lily, 9 years old with the same impatient energy I'd had at her age. When she played her first complete chord progression, I cried. My parents moved out 6 weeks after Grandpa's death. They didn't wait the full year. Too many painful memories, they said. I think they couldn't stand the reminder. They bought a small condo across town. Dad's firm downsized after losing the Chen partnership. Mom joined a different architectural collective where people didn't know their history. We don't speak. Not from anger exactly, just distance. Some chasms are too wide to bridge. But I'm not bitter. Bitterness exhausts me, and I have a life to build. Evenings, I sit at my Taylor and play until stars emerge. Sometimes Miles, sometimes Coltrane, sometimes melodies I improvise that go nowhere and everywhere. Grandpa's presence lingers in those moments, in the jasmine from his garden, in how light falls through windows at dusk. He's gone but everywhere. And I'm finally free. 9 months after the funeral, my phone rang. Marcus. I stared 3 rings before answering. Jess. His voice sounded different, smaller. Marcus. Silence stretched between us. I'm not calling to ask anything, he said finally. I just wanted to say something. Okay. I've been thinking about everything, about how I acted. He took a shaky breath. I was so angry initially, at you, at Grandpa. I thought you'd stolen from me. And now, pause, now I'm working paralegal at a small firm. I take the bus. I started therapy. I didn't respond. I listened. My therapist says I have unpacking to do about Mom and Dad, about how I was raised, why I thought I deserved everything without earning it. He laughed hollow. Turns out being the favorite isn't a gift. It's a cage. I'm glad you're working through it, I said. I'm not asking forgiveness. His voice cracked. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know I understand now why you did what you did. Why Grandpa did what he did. Grandpa loved you too, Marcus. He just couldn't reward behavior that hurt people. I know. A sniffle. I know that now. We sat in silence. If you want to talk sometime, I said carefully, I'm willing to listen. But trust rebuilds slowly. I understand. We hung up without goodbye, not from coldness, but because neither knew how. Some doors closed can open slowly. They can still open. It's autumn now, 1 year since Grandpa entered hospice. Tonight I sit at my tailor as sun sets over the garden. Windows open, warm breeze carrying cedar and cut grass. I play Grandpa's favorite, Take 5, letting notes drip through the house, filling silence with something gentle. I think about everything that happened. The betrayal. The revelation. The boundaries I never imagined I'd have courage to set. I think about Grandpa, his strength, his patience, his determination to protect me even dying. I think about my parents in their condo, rebuilding lives that'll never match their imagination. About Marcus on the bus, learning what earning something means. I don't hate them. Hate drains too much energy. But I don't need them either. And that's freedom I never expected. The song ends. Final notes hang in air, then fade into evening quiet. I look at Grandpa's photo on the piano. Him at 60, radiant, fingers on Gibson strings I'll never play again. I'm okay, Grandpa, I whisper. I'm more than okay. Somewhere, I believe he hears me. I close the guitar case, stand, walk to the window. Stars beginning to emerge, pinpricks of light in darkening sky. I don't have the original guitar. I don't have the family I thought I had. But I have something better. Myself. Boundaries. A life built on truth instead of silence. And that's the real inheritance Grandpa left me. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to stand up in a family that made you invisible, you're not alone. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's how you honor your worth.